Hey coders, welcome to another exciting tutorial on my channel. Today we are going on a beginner-friendly coding adventure where we will create a sleek website for an IT company using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Of course, that doesn't mean that you can only create an IT company website using this tutorial. You can not only create website for any company you like, but also the skills that you learn will be useful for any kind of front-end development. And don't worry if you are new to coding, this is a beginner-friendly tutorial where I'll explain everything along the way. Throughout this tutorial, we will focus on making our website responsive, adding stylish CSS animation, and incorporating dynamic elements with JavaScript. By the end, you will have skills to build your own professional-looking websites. So grab your favorite beverage, fire up your coding editor, and let's dive into the world of web development together. Let's get started. In our project folder, I have created 3 files which are all empty and one folder called images. So this folder contains all the images that we will utilize in this project. And now if you notice, this index.html file is empty, so is script.js, and likewise style.css file is also empty. Let's start with index.html and generate the skeleton code. Okay, so let's change first title to Infinity Technology. Now let's link our style and CSS files as well. So for the style file, since the name is style.css, so we don't need to change over here. And for the JavaScript file, let's link it at the very end. So script.js. And since we will also be including some Font Awesome icons, so let's go and get the link from the Font Awesome website. Okay, so this is the Font Awesome website and I've already logged in. You also need to have created a kit because this is the link for the kit that you have to include in your HTML file to use the Font Awesome icons. So this is my free kit. Let's copy this and paste it over here. Okay, now we are all set to define the header section. So for that we are using the header element and giving it the class name header as well. Okay, so we have this header element with the class name header. Now we have to define the contents of that header element. Okay, and for the contents, and this is the header section, so we have to have one logo for the website. Then we have this menu bar at the right side. But if we go to this mobile app, then instead of this menu, we are seeing this drop down menu, so we need this icon as well. This icon won't be visible unless we are in the mobile version, but we still have to put it there. So basically we have 3 elements inside the header element: the logo, this menu bar, and then that Font Awesome icon, which is usually called a hamburger icon. So that means we need 3 children for this header section. The first one is going to be a div with the class name logo, and there we are going to have an image with its source from images, and then we have this logo one. Let's remove this alternate. Okay, the second element is going to be a nav element. Let's give class name as well. And this nav element contains 5 anchor elements. So a asterisk 5, which means times 5. So this will create 5 anchor elements. First one, let's give it name home, then about section, then services, projects, and content. Now for the time being, we are leaving these h references empty because currently we haven't defined any sections. Once we define those sections, we have to give each of those sections a particular ID. Then in order to link that particular section with these anchor elements, we have to write hash, and then we have to write the whatever section ID we assign to it. But since we haven't yet assigned anything, so let's keep them empty. And after the nav element, we need to define the hamburger icon over here. So let's put it inside a div with the class name hamburger. Now there we have to include the Font Awesome icon. For that we have to go to the Font Awesome website. Okay, we are going to search the icons for the hamburger. Okay, let's use this one. but we need to change the version from 6 to 5 because that's the version number associated with my kit, and I can only use the icons from that version. So we don't have that version in this we don't have that icon in this version, so let's click this one. Now since we are using HTML, so click it to copy and paste it over here. Let's go live and see what we have built so far. So first let's check the port number. This is the port number where this index.html file is live. So 127.0.0.1, which means localhost, and then we have to attach the port number. Okay, so this is how it currently looks. Remember, our demo is running on the port 5501, and the project that we are currently building is running on the port 5500. Okay, so this is how the HTML displays it. Now we have to use CSS styles to give it a proper navigation bar look. So now let's go to style.css file, and before we move on to defining styles for the navigation bar, we have to define some basic global properties which will be applied to our whole project. And the first thing that we are going to define over here is the link to the font website that we are going to use in this project. So for that, let's search Google font picture. Okay, so this is the font that we are using. These are the styles. So let's click on this get font family, and then we have to click on this get embedded code. Okay, now once we reach here, we have to make sure the web is selected, and then we are going to use this add import. So this gives us add import link, and this is the way to use this bitter font. So first let's copy this and let's copy it. Okay, paste it over here. Let's remove this style tags because we are in the CSS file, so we can only use these tags inside the HTML code. Then let's copy this and paste this over here as well, but let's comment them out for the time being. So basically, whichever element we want to assign this font family, we will use this font family bitter sans serif, and if we have to change the font weight, then this is the one we will use, and if we have to change the style, then we will use this property. Next, we are going to define some variables for the theme colors. That is all the colors that we are going to frequently use throughout the website. And since these variables are going to be used throughout the website, that means we have to define it within the root section. So anything that we define in this root block is going to be accessible throughout the website. So primary color, this is the name that we are going to give to our variable, primary color. And this is a shade of black but with some tint from the blue color. Then secondary color, and this is also a shade of black but slightly more bluish tint in it. Next, we are going to define two colors for the text. Primary text, now secondary text. These are the two text colors. Now another variable, this is the outline color. Next, define some styles for all the HTML elements, which are asterisk, a block which is followed by asterisk. This means the styles that we are going to define over here are going to be applied to all the HTML elements. So first of all, we are going to remove margin and paddings. We do this because all HTML elements have by default some margins and paddings applied, and since we don't know which element has what margin and what padding, so it's a relatively common practice that at the beginning we strip off all the margins and paddings. Then if we like, we assign individual elements margins and paddings ourselves. Padding 0. Then for the box sizing, we define border box. And by assigning border box to box sizing, we are saying that whatever initial width we assign to any element and then we assign any padding to it, that padding should be subtracted from the total width and height. If we don't define this property, then what will happen is that whatever width and height we assign to our element, and on top of that, if we define the border, then that border area is added to the total width and height. This way, the total width and height of whole element will be larger than what we had ourselves defined. So if we don't want our element to exceed out of that size, then we have to set this property, box sizing to border box. Next property is caret color, and let's give it transparent. So by setting caret color to transparent, the effect will be that if we click on anywhere on the web page, then we will not be able to see this blinking caret. Now let's define some styles for the HTML, that is the whole document. And again, this is a relatively general practice that we give it font size to 62.5%. And what is the effect of defining this font size to be 62.5% is that usually most of the browsers have by default font size set to 16 pixels. Now with 16 pixels, it's not very easy to visualize in our mind if you want to increase the font size, such as what will be the value if you want to increase just 20% more, or what will be the value if you want to increase it just 12% more. So by setting font size to 65.5%, this usually reduces the font size from 16 pixels to 10 pixels. Now this way, if you just want to increase just 10%, then we will add just 1 pixel. If you want to double the size, it will be 20 pixels. If you want to half the size, it will be 5 pixels. If you want to increase just 20% more, so it will be 120%, that is 12 pixels. So this way, it's easy to visualize in our mind how many pixels do we want to increase our font size by. Same, we don't want to see any scroll bar in the horizontal direction. So overflow X is hidden. Then there are two more properties, scroll behavior, smooth, and this will have the effect. Let me show you in the demo project. So let's suppose if I click on this services, the scroll bar will smoothly scroll down. So let's click on projects, and you see the small scrolling effect. So this happens because of setting this scroll behavior to smooth. Then we have this scroll padding top property, this one. Let's not assign any value. Let's comment this out for the time being. Eventually we will use it, but let's put it there and comment it out for the time being, because currently it won't make any sense. Okay, then for the transition, so no matter what kind of animation or transition we have defined in our web page, so how should that transition take place? We are defining those properties over here. So it consists of 3 elements or 3 properties. The first one is what kind of transition we are applying over here. So right now we don't know what kind of transition is going to be used, therefore we are going to put all. That means no matter what kind of transition is applied, the property that we define over here will be applied to all of them. So therefore all, and then how much time it should take the transition to take place, so 1 second, and how should this transition take place. So let's put in ease. So that means then let's define global text color, and it's going to be primary text color. Not primary, we need secondary, the shade of gray. Okay, we are done with the general styles. Now let's start working on the header element. So since we have given it a class header, we are using that class to define the styles. The first thing that we are going to define is background color, and give it the color primary color. Okay, so this is the effect. Now let's go back to demo, and if you notice, no matter how further we scroll down, the navigation bar is always visible. So we have to define that behavior, because if we don't define that behavior, if we scroll down, the navigation bar will scroll up and it will be invisible in the browser. So for that we have to assign it position fixed. Now position fixed is always with respect to the viewport window, and because we are defining it with respect to the viewport area, so even when we scroll down, because the position of the header is defined with respect to the viewport, so it has to be always visible in the viewport. So this is how we fix our navigation bar in the browser window. Now setting position fixed will not do much unless we define some other properties. That is, with respect to the top dimension of the viewport window, where should this be? So we are giving it value 0. That means with respect to the top area, it should start exactly where the viewport starts. And with respect to the left, again 0. That means it should also start exactly where viewport window begins with respect to the left dimension of the viewport area. Now since we want the header section to stretch out the whole window, so we can give it width 100%. Then we want to give it a fixed height. So height is going to be 12% of viewport area. So 12 VH, that means viewport height. Okay, so this is the total space it's going to occupy. Now, because the image occupies a lot more space than this height, so it seems like the image has gone out of that area. And since this navigation bar and the hamburger icons were defined after this image, so they have been pushed down as well. Now remember, the size has shrunk down because we have defined the font size for whole HTML element to be 62.5%. That is exactly 10 pixels. So that's why they have shrunk down. Now to place this navigation bar and this hamburger in a same row as this image, we have to set its display property. So display is flex, and by default all the children of the element for which we are setting display property to flex, they go all in the same row. So here it is. This is image, this is our navigation bar, and where did hamburger go? Well, it must be here somewhere. Let's change this color to some light color to make sure that our hamburger is still present there. So for the time being, let's comment this out and get a different background color. So let's set it to pink, a light color, and there it is. Okay, so it's still there. So as you can see, now they are all in the horizontal direction. The image is supposed to go over here because the size of the image is too big. That's why it has pushed down. But technically, it's over here. So image, then navigation links, and then our hamburger. So let's go back. Okay, now we have to justify content and put space between them. Space between. So it will try to bring in as much space between all these three elements as possible. And with respect to the alignment, they are in the center. That is, with respect to the height of the header element, they will be exactly in the center. Okay, now you can see the element has been pushed up because half of it is visible and the rest of the half is above this viewport area. So the image is trying to also fit in within exactly in the center of the height of this header section. And if you notice over here, our navigation links, they are exactly in the center. Now our hamburger must have moved somewhere over here in the corner because we have set the justify content property to space between. So there is as much space between them as possible. And since we want this header section to be always visible, which we have made sure by setting the display property to flex, but to be double sure, we are also assigning it Z index to be the highest index in the highest index. So if we are going to assign this Z index to any other element in our project, we have to make sure it's less than 1000. This way, because the 1000 is going to be the highest value, so this is going to let header section always stay on top of other elements. So if there is any overlapping between different elements, because of the Z index being highest for the header section, the header will always be the topmost element and the other elements will be underneath it. Now let's go to the image. So since image is inside a div called logo, so we have to first of all give it certain height. Otherwise, our image will not fit inside that height. So since the total height of the header is 12 viewport area, so we are going to give that height to our logo div as well, which is 12 viewport. Okay, next header logo, and we have an image element within it. So now height, we are going to give it 100%. So this will take 100% of the parent. By setting height 100% to the image, it will take 100% of its parent. So the parent has 12% height, the image will also get 12% height. And because we are setting height, the width will automatically adjust so that the aspect ratio is maintained. Now as you can see, our image has also shrunk down because we have set the width of its parent container, the image parent container, that is the logo div, to be 12% height, and then we made sure the image itself takes same height as its enclosing container. If we don't define the height of the enclosing container, now over here, since the image doesn't know what is the height of its enclosing container, so therefore the image will take 100% of its own height. Let me show you the effect. Okay, as you can see, again the image got the original size because the first thing when you set the height is that, or if you don't set the height, in both the cases, what it will do, it will try to look for the height of the enclosing container. If there is no explicit height defined for the enclosing container, then the image will take its own 100% height. So in order to make sure the image always fits in the enclosing container's height, we have to give some explicit height to its enclosing container. Okay, now let's move on to defining styles for the navigation links. Okay, so since the navigation bar is inside the header and the class name that we have assigned to that navigation bar is nav, and let's target individual anchor elements. So color let's give it secondary text color. Then let's put margin between all of them. So top bottom 0. We don't need any top and bottom margins, therefore 0. Then for the left and right, 1.5 frame, that is 15 pixels. Okay, so now there is some space between all of these navigation links, but the font size is way too small. So next give it font size 1.8 frames. So that means 18 pixels. Okay. Text transform, capitalize. Text decoration none. So this will remove the underlining effect from the anchor elements. Okay. I think I haven't used any font anywhere. So let's give it font family. Okay, now for the font family. Okay. Copy. Paste it over here. Okay, that's better. Oh, I think I've used two different fonts in this project, Poppins and Bitter. So I think this is Poppins. Okay, now search Poppins. Import, copy it, paste. Now let's remove this. Then let's just copy this. We are not going to copy all of them because we can directly use font weight 100 and font style normal. Okay, so let's just copy this font family and let's go down. Now let's go down. This is the font family that we have to use. Okay, so this is how it looks. Okay, now the default font size for the whole HTML page is Poppins. Okay, now let's go back to the anchor tag. There, font size is 1.8. Let's make it 2 rems. Okay, that's better. And let's change the font weight. So let's make it 600 and see its effect. Okay, maybe a little less. Let's make it 500. Spelling. The next style that we have to define is that when we hover over them, the hovered anchor element changes its color. So let's copy this, paste, and attach hover pseudo class. We simply have to change the color to primary text. Okay, then next what we have to do is that we have to define a class which when attached to any anchor element, then that anchor element will be different color. For example, since we are in services, because we clicked on service, so the services is a different color, is a primary color, even when we are not hovering over it. Now let's click on project. Now the color of the project is primary color. So when we hover over rest of the elements, they change to primary color, but the link which has been selected, it remains primary color as long as its contents are displayed in the viewport area. So for that, we are going to define the class copy. When this anchor element has a class called active, then it has the same color. Okay, to see its effect, let's go to index.html and let's assign a class to the second anchor element. So class is active. So as you can see, because the class active is attached to the second anchor element, it's always primary color. Okay, let's remove this because we will attach and remove this class from these anchor elements using JavaScript. Now let's start working on defining styles for the hamburger icon. So header, and the class that we have given it is hamburger as well. Hamburger, so this is a div. Now let me show you something first. So if I set its display property to none, now because the hamburger is not there, and for the header section we had set display flex and justify content space between, therefore the nav elements have moved towards the rightmost area of the window. Earlier it was in the center because we had third element, which was hamburger. The moment we set its display property none, this nav bar will move to its right place. But since we have defined its style, so I'm going to comment this out for the time being so that we can see the effect of styling on our hamburger. If it's invisible, we won't be able to see anything. Okay, so let's give it height 3 rem, width is also 3 rem so that it turns into a square shape. Then line height 2.5, a little bit less than the height of the div. Border radius, we have to give it slightly round edges, so just 4 pixels, that means 0.4 rem. Then background color, secondary text align center, font size 1.8 rem, justify content center. Okay, let's change it to display flex because otherwise justify content center won't work. And now align item center as well. So this is how it looks. We are going to give some padding to this whole header so that there is some space between the elements in the navigation bar and the browser window. So let's go back to the header. Okay, now let's give it some padding. So top and bottom we don't need any padding. However, for the left and right, let's give it 2 rem. Okay, so now there is some space between the edges of the browser window and the items. Okay, so the color of the bars inside this menu icon is the primary color. So now we have to define that style. Copy, paste. Now since the hamburger, the font item element itself is this an I tag, so I, and now let's define the color. Primary text. Okay, now next we have to work on, let's go to demo first. So if you notice, currently the hero section, our home section, is visible in the viewport area, and therefore this home link is also highlighted. If we click on about section, now only the about section is highlighted, and the visible section is also the about us section. So that means whichever section we are on, that navigation link is highlighted. This also happens if we manually scroll up and down. So now we have to define this logic, but in order to define this logic, we have to give all of these anchors their href values. So that means we have to define these sections. So I'm going to enclose all the sections in the main element, and there the first section is going to be, let's call it home section, and also give it ID. Okay, currently this section is empty, so let's give it some contents. Let's give it 100. Now let's copy this section, then about, services, project, and contact. So 4 more. Paste 2, 3, and 4. Okay, this is home section. Then this is about, then services, project. Paste 1 more, and this one is going to be contact. Okay, first section is home with ID home, second one is home. Okay, now this is extra because I inserted another one section at the end because I thought I haven't inserted enough sections. home, about, services, project, contact. Okay, let's see how it looks in the browser. Let's give them values: home, then hash about, services, projects, and contact. I think we have kept project singular, so make it plural. Okay. Now the thing is this: they are all scattered. This whole text is scattered together. So what I'm going to do is that I am going to give a temporary style for the section. Give it with a very small width. Let's give it 5% because I want the scroll bar to appear. So each section just have 5% width. Let's give it background color as well. No, never mind. Okay, so now as you can see, because all the contents have to fit in just 5% width, because of that we have now got the scroll bar. Okay, let's give each of these sections a H1 to differentiate between them. So home section. Okay, then this is about section. Services. Okay, services, projects, and then contact. So there is about section, then we have services, projects, contact us. So only we can't see home section because it's actually behind this navigation bar, but it's there. So let's click on this about. Now as you can see, we scrolled down to about us section, but obviously this part is not visible because it's behind the navigation bar. We will fix that part later. Okay, now we are at services. Let's click on project, and this is projects. So that means we are able to scroll up or down to the appropriate section when we click on these links. Now we have to highlight the anchor link whose contents are being displayed in the window. So for that we have to define logic in the script file. Let's get reference to all the anchor elements. So nav links the query selector all, and we are interested in anchor element, but not just any anchor element, the one which is inside the nav element. So the parent is nav with the class name nav. Okay, now we have to decide where are we going to define this logic. So we have two options over here. When we click on the when we click on the anchor links, or when the scroll is moved up and down. But if you notice, when we click on the anchor links, even in that case, the scroll moves up and down. So that means we can define this logic with the onScroll event. And since we want to define this logic for whole window or for whole document, so we are going to use window.onScroll. So this is the event with which we want to attach this logic. So now to this we are going to give an arrow function. Now over here, first of all, we have to get reference to all these sections. So again, since we have a lot of sections, therefore we are using query selector all, and to that we are going to pass section. Now we are going to iterate over each of these sections. So for each, let's pass one section at a time to the arrow function. Now within the body of this arrow function we have to define three variables. So now the name that we are going to give this variable is scroll distance top. Now in this variable we are going to store the value which is actually the distance from the top edge of the browser to where the scroll is currently present. So that's why scroll distance top. Let's make it from scroll distance from top. And to get that distance, we are going to use window dot scroll while. Now this scroll y will give us a distance from the top of the window to where the scroll bar is currently present. So that means this is a dynamic variable. Every time the scroll bar is moved up or down, the value in this variable will change. Next, we have another variable, section total height. Now to this variable, we are going to assign the total height of any particular section. Once that height is figured out, then that height remains unchanged as long as no changes are made to the section itself. For example, if we add more contents to the section, the height will increase. If we remove some contents, the height will decrease. But as long as the section remains unchanged, the value in this variable will also remain unchanged. And the way to get that value is section dot, we have a variable or property to each section which is called offset height. Okay, now the third variable that we are going to define, section distance from parent. So this variable will store the value, which is basically the distance between the parent, the top edge of the parent, and the top edge of the section. So let's go to index.html. Now if you notice, the sections are all defined within this main element. So that means for all of these sections, the main is its parent. So this new variable, section distance from parent, will store the distance from the parent, that is main, and this section home. So since this is the very first child, so the distance between these two will be 0. However, the distance between the main and this second section will be some value, let's say 60 pixels, and then the distance between the main and this third section will be, let's say, 120 pixels, and likewise. So that's the general idea. However, in order for this main to be its referenced parent, we have to set its position property to something other than default. The default value is static. So if the default value is static, that means we don't assign any position other than static to this main. The main will not be considered the parent. It will go further up to the body. Then in that case, this body will become its parent. However, we will assign position to this element. Therefore, eventually this main will be the parent with which the distance between the sections and the parents will be evaluated. So the value is offset top. So this scroll bar is the property of window, and this offset height and offset top are the properties of a section. Now to put some cushion between the top edge of the browser or a section, we are going to subtract some pixels. So we are subtracting 100 pixels. The value 100 is not mandatory. You can make it 150, you can make it 90 pixels, it's up to you. Okay, so now we have got all the variables that are going to come in handy in order to define the logic. Now using these three variables, we have to figure out where the cursor currently is. Let's change the name of this variable from scroll distance top to scroll position. Okay, now we have to make sure this scroll position is between, so this scroll position has to be between the section distance from parent and section total height plus section distance from parent. So this is the general idea. So the scroll position, so this variable should have a value greater than or equal to this variable and less than or equal to these two variables added together, because this value is the starting point of the section and this value is the total height plus the distance from the top edge of the window. So the scroll position has to be between these two values. So the logic is, if scroll position has to be greater than or equal to section distance from parent and scroll position is less than or equal to copy paste. In that case, now in order to define the logic over here, we need to somehow get a reference to this section. So we are going to define one more variable over here. So let id equals section dot get attribute, and the attribute we are interested in is id. Okay, So now we have the ID of each section stored in this ID variable. Now over here we have to target the anchor element whose href value contains this ID. So to do that, we are going to document.query selector. Not all, we are looking for a specific one, so just query selector. Then we are interested in header because that's where all the anchor elements are defined. So in header we have another element called name, and there we have anchor element, so anchor. Then we are interested in accessing its href value, so square bracket href equals. Now since this ID value is a dynamic one, so plus ID, and now we need the closing square bracket, so concatenate closing square bracket. Now once we get reference to that particular href, then we are chaining in another method which is called class list, and this class list has a method called add. To using this we are going to add a class called active. Okay, so this is the general idea. A very important piece of information is still missing, but let's go to the browser for the time being and see how is it working so far. So refresh. Now let's click. Nothing. Oh, okay. So the problem is I have used over here the assignment operator, whereas I have to use a wildcard character, so asterisk equals. So this means select an anchor element whose href value can be anything as long as within that value there is this ID. So whatever is the value of this ID, so that value should also be present. It doesn't matter whether it's in the middle of that value, at the beginning of that value, or at the end of that value, or even if that's the only value that is the value of href. So no matter where that value is, as long as within the whole value of this href there is this ID value present somewhere, then select that anchor element. Okay, hopefully now it will work. Okay, so currently it has been selected project because we are on projects. Now let's click on home. So this home has been selected, but if you notice about and services also got selected. That's because we were on the project section, but when we clicked on home, the scroll bar kept going up, and first it encountered services, so it attached active class to this anchor element as well, anchor link as well. Then as we moved up, then we encountered about, and then active class got attached to this anchor element as well, and then we moved up to home, and an active element got attached to this as well. Now we want slight modifications to this, such that the active class is only attached to that element whose contents are currently visible. The moment we move away from that section, this active class should also get removed so that it comes back to its original font color. So now we have to define that logic. So for that we are going at the very top, and within the body of this arrow function associated with the sections. So the first thing that we have to do is that iterate over all the links and remove any active class attached to them. Then we will execute this logic and attach active class with only that anchor element who's currently visible in the browser. So over here, remove active class from all anchor elements. So this is the logic we are defining. And second is, and the following logic is, iterate over all sections and attach active class with anchor element whose contents are displayed in the browser currently. Okay, so let's define this first logic. So now we have to remove active class from all the anchor elements. So what we are going to do is that we are going to iterate over these nav links, because this nav link contains all the anchor elements. So nav links dot for each, and we have to pass one link at a time. Link dot class list dot remove active class. Okay, let's click on home. Okay, I am sorry, this logic is supposed supposed to be defined even outside this block. So we have to define it within the arrow function belonging to this on scroll function. So this is where it's supposed to go, because the moment the scroll is moved, at that instance we want to remove active class from all the anchor elements, and then we want to iterate over all the sections, and over here we will attach active class to only that section whose href contains this ID. Refresh. Now home. Now let's scroll down. Now the home got deselected and about is highlighted. Let's go down. Now section is highlighted only. Project, about. Oh. The other problem is, let's suppose if we click on services. Now if we refresh the page, the services get deselected. That's because every time we refresh the page, the index.html page gets reloaded again. And when it gets reloaded, the scroll hasn't been moved. Therefore, the window.onScroll event has never occurred. And as a result, we don't see any of these anchor links highlighted. Now, let's hit enter. Now, if you notice, this services gets highlighted. Hit enter one more time. Again, it's gone. So, the behavior is unpredictable. It's again highlighted, 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 and it's gone again. So this behavior is unpredictable. This is something we have to work on. Then another thing that we have to work on is we have to make this navigation bar responsive. So that's plenty of work to do, which we will cover in our upcoming video. In the meantime, if you like this video, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share. Happy coding.